What if belief in God wasn't a matter of blind faith, but of reason, pure, sharpened logic? No miracles, no visions, no ancient texts whispered from heaven, just the mind and its power to pierce the veil of reality. In the 13th century, a Dominican friar walked the line between mystic devotion and rational inquiry, and claimed that God's existence could be proven without faith at all. His name? Thomas Aquinas. To many, a saint. To others, a philosopher who dared to bring reason to the divine. But what if his arguments were more than just philosophy? What if, beneath the surface, his 5 ways weren't simply theological reasoning, but encoded pathways, keys to understanding the nature of reality itself? In this episode, we'll journey through the mind of Aquinas, not as dusty history, but as a map to a hidden truth. We'll explore how motion, causality, existence, perfection, and intelligence might not just hint at God, but point directly to something far more profound than religious dogma ever imagined. If you've ever wondered whether reason alone can lead to the divine, if you've ever questioned whether logic and spirituality can coexist, then stay close, because what you're about to hear may change how you see everything. In the medieval era, the world was divided. On one side stood the church, a towering institution of faith and divine authority. On the other side, the growing influence of philosophy, mathematics, and the sciences beckoned humanity to explore the world with reason, not just religion. It was in this turbulent intersection that Thomas Aquinas emerged, a figure who would bridge the gap between these two realms with profound impact. Born in 1225, Aquinas was a Dominican friar, an intellectual giant, and one of the most influential figures in the history of Christian philosophy. His mission? To reconcile faith with reason, to prove that the divine could not only be believed, but understood through logic. His magnum opus, Summa Theologica, became the cornerstone for Christian thought and established him as a philosopher whose ideas transcended religious boundaries. But Aquinas was not just a theologian confined to the Church's teachings. He was deeply influenced by Aristotle, whose ancient wisdom had long been forgotten in the West, but was being rediscovered through translations into Latin. Aristotle's logic, his observations about the nature of existence, and his approach to causality provided Aquinas with a framework to argue that the existence of God could be deduced from the 5 ways very structure of reality itself. Aquinas' 5 ways, his celebrated logical proofs for God's existence, were revolutionary not just for their intellectual rigor, but for the audacity of their claim. They suggested that God wasn't something to be taken on faith alone. He was an inevitable conclusion, visible in the fabric of the universe. Yet, this was not an easy task. The Church's powerful grip on medieval society made any attempt to blend reason and theology risky. Aquinas' ideas were revolutionary in their time, and many were hesitant to accept them. Some dismissed him as a heretic. Others feared that his reliance on logic threatened the purity of faith. The tension between faith and reason reached its peak during the scholastic movement, and Aquinas found himself at the heart of a battle that would shape Western thought for centuries. But why was this knowledge so difficult to embrace? Why, despite its potential, was Aquinas' message nearly lost to history for several centuries? Aquinas' argument for the existence of God begins not with theology or scripture, but with the world we can all observe. the reality we live in. His approach was groundbreaking because he looked to reason, not faith, to unlock the divine. The first of his 5 ways is known as the argument from motion. To grasp its depth, imagine standing still in a room. Now consider the air around you, shifting, vibrating, constantly in motion. In Aquinas' view, this movement wasn't arbitrary. It had to have a cause. Everything that moves is moved by something else, Aquinas argued. But if we trace this chain of motion backward, we can't have an infinite series of causes. There must have been a first mover, a primary cause that set everything in motion. That first mover, Aquinas concluded, is God. But what does this mean for us today? Aquinas' insight isn't limited to an ancient metaphysical debate. His argument illuminates a deeper principle that still resonates in modern physics, the idea of causality. The universe functions as a vast, interconnected system where every action is linked to a cause. For Aquinas, this causality pointed to something greater than the universe itself, something that didn't require another cause, something eternal, unchanging, and capable of creating all that is in motion. This was the God he saw with the eyes of reason, not revelation. Now, let's turn to the argument from cause. Aquinas argued that everything in the world has a cause. Your thoughts, your movements, even the very existence of the universe. But again, this chain of causes must have a starting point. There cannot be an infinite regression of causes. There must be a first cause, a cause that itself is not caused by anything else. This uncaused cause, Aquinas posited, is God. It is the source of all things that exist, yet it itself exists independently without needing a cause. Both of these arguments, the unmoved mover and the uncaused cause, present a God not as a distant figure or as a product of human imagination, but as the very foundation of the universe itself. To Aquinas, God wasn't something out there, unreachable. God was the ultimate cause of all things, visible in every atom, every breath, and every thought. Having explored the first 2 arguments, the unmoved mover and the uncaused cause, Aquinas' remaining 3 ways continue to build on the logic of reason, each expanding the idea of God as not just an abstract concept, but a tangible force in the fabric of existence. Let's dive into the next 2 arguments, which continue to challenge the boundaries of what we can see and know with our senses. The third is the argument from contingency. Aquinas observed that everything around us, every object, every event, could not have existed. Take a moment and reflect. Every person, every plant, every star has a beginning and an end. It exists only because of some cause or condition that brings it into being. But the key question for Aquinas is, why does anything exist at all? Why not nothing? Aquinas argues that there must be something that exists necessarily, something that could not exist. This necessary being is the source of all contingent beings, those that could have been but might not have been. For Aquinas, this necessary being is God, the one thing that exists of necessity, without cause, and from which all other things spring. Next comes the argument from perfection. We all have some concept of perfection in our minds, whether it's the perfect love, the perfect truth, or the perfect form of beauty. But these ideas can only exist because we have a standard of perfection. The fact that we recognize imperfection in the world around us means we have an innate understanding of what perfection is. But where does this idea of perfection come from? For Aquinas, the very idea of perfection points to a perfect being, a being that embodies absolute goodness, beauty, truth, and power. This, again, leads to the conclusion that God must exist as the absolute standard of all perfection, the perfect being against which all else is measured. Without the existence of such a being, the very notion of perfection itself would be nonsensical. As we can see, Aquinas' logic is like a finely crafted web, each argument supporting the next, from motion to causality, from contingency to perfection. Each idea builds on the last. But even more, these ideas interlock to present an image of God as the ground of all reality, not a separate deity above the world, but the essential source of everything we experience. Now that we've ventured through the lofty heights of Aquinas' philosophical proofs, you might wonder, how does this ancient reasoning apply to my life today? The concept of God as an unmoved mover, a necessary being, or the embodiment of perfection isn't just a matter for the realm of academics or theological debate. It can serve as a tool for transforming your own mindset, consciousness, and even your daily existence. 1. Finding purpose through the necessary being. If we accept Aquinas' premise that a necessary being must exist, consider how this impacts your understanding of purpose. Everything in life is contingent. It can come and go, fade or thrive. But the idea of a necessary being calls you to reflect on your own necessity in the grand scheme. What drives your actions if nothing is certain? Can you find within yourself the necessary being that gives your life meaning without relying on external causes or circumstances? In practical terms, this might look like approaching each day with the intention to act from necessity, as if your actions are part of a grand, inevitable design, one that transcends temporary setbacks or distractions. 2. Embracing perfection and striving for the highest form of good. Aquinas' argument from perfection invites you to examine what you deem perfect in your life, whether it's in your personal relationships, work, or aspirations. Just as Aquinas believed in an absolute perfect being, you can challenge yourself to identify and strive for the highest form of goodness in everything you do. This doesn't mean perfectionism in the superficial sense, but a relentless pursuit of excellence, knowing that your own life's beauty and purpose are defined by the ideals you uphold. When faced with a decision, ask yourself, what is the highest good I can aspire to in this moment? 3. Grounding in unmovable faith amidst life's chaos. Lastly, the idea of the unmoved mover can serve as a stabilizing force in your life. In a world where circumstances often seem unpredictable and chaotic, recognizing the unchanging nature of a higher order, whether you call it God, the universe, or the absolute, provides you with a sense of peace. When your external world shifts, hold steady by connecting with your inner conviction, knowing that there is a force larger than yourself guiding the course of events. Aquinas' arguments show us that we don't have to rely solely on blind faith or miracles to experience divine wisdom. We can find logical foundations for our beliefs, one that brings us closer to understanding the cosmos and our place within it. As we close the chapter on Thomas Aquinas and his daring attempt to prove God's existence through pure reason, we are left with a powerful reflection. Faith and logic need not be separate forces. In the mystical dance between belief and reason, Aquinas showed us that it's possible to look at the world, at existence itself, and find profound arguments that point toward a greater truth. A divine presence that doesn't rely on miracles or mystical experiences. Through his 5 ways, Aquinas gave us a blueprint for understanding the world around us, whether you view them as literal truths or as metaphors for the divine forces at work in the universe. His thoughts offer an invitation to seek deeper meaning in all that we do. His approach isn't just about proving God's existence, but about expanding our perception of reality, encouraging us to question, explore, and seek answers. So, as we reflect on this journey from reason to transcendence, ask yourself, can reason alone guide us to a higher understanding of the universe? Or is there more at play in our pursuit of meaning than logic can explain? The answers may lie somewhere in the balance between knowledge and mystery, faith and reason. If this exploration has sparked curiosity, I encourage you to continue the quest. Subscribe, share, and dive deeper into the mysteries of our world.